These are 5 questions that really stem from all of my work over the last few years that really stick out as to the why on the black question in general. It also entails all of the research that I've done. And I think any person that really wants to have a strong consciousness about where we are and where we need to go, these 5 questions pretty much drill that. This is a complex question, and there are many facets to the answer. The tragedies to black people really began in the late 15th century with the breakdown of understanding of our identity and purpose as a people at a critical time in human history. And that critical time in human history I'm speaking of was the European Renaissance. That resulted in divisions and wars on the African continent, which eventually led to transatlantic slavery. My answer is absolutely not. It is impossible for any person to find any biblical or spiritual proof that God, who created all mankind in his image and who in the New Testament presents himself as a loving father who's not only provided redemption for all humanity, but calls us all into a loving relationship with himself. In any way, we can't say that he has rejected our people, that he's cursed our people, or assigned our people a lower status among other races in the earth. You cannot get there. In chapter 3 of the book, I talk about the Indestructible mountain. I talk about how God allowed Satan to test this mountain with everything he could throw at it, and afterwards, it still stood strong. It was God who told Satan that he could test the mountain, and it was God that said also, there's nothing you can do. And that's exactly what happened after all of the efforts on the part of Satan and his evil systems and his schemes in that particular context. And that is very much the same experience we as a people have experienced. For the last 500 years, 400 here in America, we have withstood the best that Satan and evil systems and people have had to offer, and yet we're still standing. So I'll be bold and confident enough to say that, as was the case with a man by the name of Job in the Bible, whom God allowed to test through some great trials and difficulties. In that particular case, he came through it and he was allowed to have double what he had before. And the Bible makes it clear that he was a wealthy person. I would go as far as to say that, unlike Job, that we will receive more than double, in the sense that we are going to be given the opportunity to have the inheritance of our ancestors, and we are also being given by God Almighty the key to change in the nations. As a people, the systems of legalized policies such as slavery and Jim Crow segregation officially set us back 334 years behind other racial groups in America. And this does not include the forces of cultural bias and opportunistic systems that we have come to know as institutional racism that has been functioning for over the last 60 years. And still, these systems are working against us. So for any people, that will create inequalities. I actually would like to make a quote from the book that sums up this situation. This is in chapter 5 of the book, and the quote goes like this. In looking at the real impact of American slavery, the Jim Crow era of disenfranchisement and segregation, and the systemic racism that has prevailed for the last 60 years, that any black persons were able to achieve anything of significance at all in America is amazing. And yet, in reality, since the beginning of the 20th century, what many black people have been able to achieve socially educationally, economically, and even politically is miraculous. As Bishop T.D. Jakes so eloquently stated in his leadership panel presentation that aired a week after George Floyd's death, and I quote, "And everywhere black people have had a level playing floor and a clear set of rules, we did good. Level playing floor on the basketball court, clear set of rules, we did good. Level playing floor in the NFL, clear set of rules, we did good. Anywhere the floor is level and the rules are clear, we do well." Something is shifting, and the black man is not relegated to an inferior status in America or the rest of the world. Interestingly enough, in 2019, we passed the 400-year mark of racial oppression in the United States. And in this year of 2026, it's the 500-year anniversary of the transatlantic slave trade, which represents the foundation of oppression for all black people in the Western nations. And both of these are indicative of a shift. In the book of Exodus, we see that the children of Israel, after 400 years of slavery, were not only set free of Egyptian bondage, but they were also compensated for their slavery, receiving the inheritance of their ancestors. And because history, in fact, does repeat itself, we can expect this to be our fate as well. Absolutely not. It is not crazy to believe that. In fact, in chapter 8 of my book, I explain life capital, which is God's system of divine reparations. Now, since God is not bound by space and time like humans, I believe the concept of life capital has been around hundreds of years ago, and that people like Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass, among others in the 19th century, were endowed with it to the place where they could do extraordinary things, even in a time when American slavery was still on. I believe that it was grace in the form of life capital that in women like Madam C.J. Walker and Ida Wells Barnett to be uncannily prolific in their day. And I believe it's life capital working in a generation of black men that in the earliest part of the 20th century began to rise like edifices in athletics and also in the arts. And by the time we get to the 1960s, we have figures like Muhammad Ali becoming the most famous person on the planet. And then we get to the 70s and you have athletes like Julius Dr. J. Irvin. And then in the 80s, the late 80s and early 90s, Michael Jordan. And so my point is this: there has been a form of life capital that's been available to us. And we are going to see more and more of us really come to a place of understanding that this is God's reparative justice. What has happened to the black man is man's inhumanity to man. But yet, God, who created every man with a hope and a purpose and a part in his diagram for humanity, he is going to restore fortunes of any people that have been devastated. He is willing to do it because he is a father and he's a restorer. And we are about to see something that no generation of black people have ever seen in this next decade. I want him to walk away knowing that, just like I lay out in chapter 8 of my book, the story of Jephthah, he is a warrior, that he was born with a great purpose, and his overall purpose was to reinstitute and recover what Dr. King so affectionately called the beloved community. You know, we as black people have a way of bringing the world together in a way that is strictly unique. Now, I want to say this, I want to be extraordinarily clear because I am not a racist. I do not believe that there is one group of people that is superior to another group of people in any shape, way, or form. I do believe that certain groups of people have certain characteristics certain endowments that allow them to do things in a particular way, but all of us together make a whole. But I will say this, because of what has happened to us for over the last 500 years, that there is a unique place at the table of life for us as Black people. And Black man, your part is critical. No one else can do your part. And if you go down because of the circumstances or because you lose hope and you take the dark road, then the gap that is left by you not doing your part is something that cannot be replaced. But if you come to the place of really believing and understanding the fact that you are somebody, that you were created with a purpose, that you have giftings that no other human being on the planet have, that wherever you are, the source of your pain is the greatest opportunity before you, then you can begin to recognize and understand that you have been given something special. And unlike previous generations where it seemed that we were just climbing a dark mountain and there was no hope to it, we are living in a time now where the understanding that we are a people whose time has come, we're just beginning to tap into this. So your identity and your purpose is so important, and it's important for you to have hope, and it's important for you to grab a lifeline and hang on until you can do better, because your part matters, and the God of heaven is there to help you. Black Man, A Prophecy of Hope for the Times Ahead is available through basically every venue possible. You can buy it at Amazon.com, at Barnes & Noble. You can get it through bookshop.org or Goodreads. You can get it at readerhouse.com. I hope that you will purchase the book and read it, and that you will give some feedback to me at info@gregldavis.com. And I hope you also like my social media pages.